இருக்கிற மனுஷங்க அவ்வளோ சிம்பிளாவோ ஈஸியாவோ இல்லை. பாரு சக்கரை, லைஃப்ல எல்லாரும் ஒரு குற்ற உணர்ச்சியோட தான் வாழ்ந்துட்டு இருக்கோம். அது நம்ம அனுபவத்துக்கு ஒரு அடையாளம்.
ஒரு சுழல் மாதிரி சுழட்டி சுழட்டி மொத்தமா கடைசி மூச்சு வரைக்கும் புரிஞ்சிடும் போல.
Pushkar and Gayatri, firstly, a warm welcome to you both on Film Mission and congratulations on the success of Sural on Prime Video.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. It's wonderful to have you both as well. So it is Prime Video's first long-form scripted original series in Tamil. And just for the audiences, it revolves around the investigation of a missing girl that wreaks havoc and disrupts a very small town in South India. So to flesh out so many layers and strands, to what extent was it mentally and creatively taxing for you both as creators?
I think we enjoyed that part of the process. There's a lot of research which goes into it, especially about the festival and the rituals associated with it, the mythology associated with it. Because here, that mythology itself changes every 50 kilometers you travel. So there was a lot of work which went into trying to identify what is base myth and also how people respond to this myth. So that part of the process is usually, I would say, sometimes it's frustrating because things will not line up. I mean, like you're trying to fix two things together, they won't line up. And then that moment will happen when things magically fall into place. So I guess you wait for that magic to happen.
And this is our first foray into long form writing. So that has also been a challenge. I mean, we were trying to figure out how the structure works and how the arcs works and like overall, like, and you need to how do you take it to another season? So all those things, I mean, we were trying to crack that as well. So it's been like extremely challenging and a lot of fun actually.
Right. And I think it's great to see you both as well because you're such fabulous creative disruptors, I think, in Tamil and South Indian cinema generally. So I think it's wonderful to see you foray with such a wonderful show. I mean, I'm still yet to watch it actually, so I cannot wait to catch it actually anytime soon.
Please do.
Yes, definitely. But tell me, when it comes to intense crime content like this, because you both are certainly not new to exploring darkness, which I will be talking about shortly later on. But how tough is it for you both to not get emotionally invested in the subjects that you're exploring?
Okay, to start with, we are happy people. We are not conflict prone. We are not aggressive like a lot of the characters we write.
Actually, all the drama comes on paper. I mean, otherwise there's no drama this side.
I guess that's the way of us also exploring the world. We would rather do it on paper and on screen rather than go pick a fight at a bar.
Get all the conflicts on paper, on screen, guys.
God, that would be very interesting. I mean, it would be a very dangerous situation if the drama that you were showing, that we see in the show, actually happens in real life. I think that would be quite terrifying.
But the point is, this drama does happen in real life to a whole bunch of people. So I think we need to acknowledge that there is a level of violence in our society. And when you write about it and when you see it on screen, I think there's a cathartic effect to it where somewhere the drama, the audience watching it also gets that the need for drama satisfied on screen and maybe.
Right. Again, another thing which I'm very intrigued by, especially of recently, I saw the Malayalam films Jallikattu and Ajagajantharam, in which the premise of the main action taking place is set at a festival, and then even in the series here, there's also a festival involved, which is a very huge pivotal backdrop. What is so enticing, do you think, about using festivals as a hook and as a narrative backdrop, do you think?
One thing is, I think we are trying to do a very Indian show. Indian in the sense that there's a certain way in which emotions are portrayed. The behavior of the people changes from culture to culture. And we are trying to show a very Indianness in this show. The festival is also something which comes under that overall bracket of being within that Indian context. And what the festival does for us is, and I guess for a lot of other writers also, is that it gives them that abstraction. It gives them that metaphor for trying to see what is the overall view of the story.
And another thing is like people here are very attached to their village festivals. I mean, you have a lot of people who are settled in US or like UK or at least in the cities kind of thing. But they usually make it a point to go to their village deity festival at least once in 5 years. I mean, that is where they kind of connect with their larger families, and it is a community thing. I mean, they connect with their gods and their larger families. So that is like an intrinsic part. I mean, we've seen a lot of people who will travel across the globe, like at least once in 5 years to attend their village festival. So I think that is like pretty connected with
and at the base of this, all the mythologies which surround the festivals are based on lives of people at some point of time or the other. And the fact that these stories have withstood the test of time means that those stories have an intrinsic connect to the people who recognize that festival. So in that way, I think these stories lend itself to something which taps into some base emotions. And those are stories which will have resonance in whichever time period you say. So that's why we would like to take a festival and use that festival's mythology as a metaphor for the journey of a particular character, or as the structural element in a plot, because I think these are very primordial instincts to connect to these stories.
Right. Yes, very well said. And I think it's also the fact that nature is representing the havoc of humans around. Like I was mentioning Jallikattu and Ajagajantharam, as titles as an example point. Even recently, I watched another film called Paka, The River of Blood as well, which is another Malayalam film which was fabulous. So again, it's very wonderful to see South Indian movies and content actually doing that. And I think it's wonderful to incorporate our culture and all of that and traditions in a way which is also very metaphoric for today's day and age. But I was talking about the darkness, and you've definitely explored a lot of dark narratives and concepts through your films. In fact, a lot of them I think are dark comedies as well, I believe.
The first two films were dark comedies, and we were going for a very quirky space with that. But on our third film, we decided to make it into a crime drama. So, and that's the space which we are fascinated with now, because somewhere I think having a crime as the centerpiece, and then explore a lot of things around it, explore characters and places and people and how relationships work, using this crime as a base is something which is sticking in our heads right now. I mean, it's filling the boxes.
Right. So I guess where are you inspired by that darkness from? Like, what do you have to kind of introspect within yourselves as people and perhaps tap into a very dark space within you as individuals to bring out that?
Actually, on the contrary, so we look at the darkness as one side of human behavior, and in everything we have done, there is multiple versions, multiple perspectives which we see. So a person whom you're showing the brightest side, we'd also like to show the darkest side. So everything we have been exploring with that duality, where we say both extremes. People are in a spectrum. Nobody is completely good. Nobody is completely bad. And everybody kind of falls into the spectrum of gray has been our overriding principle. And
the darkness comes out of the crime. Otherwise, if you take out the crime, all those characters are like, they're not languishing in their darkness. It is because of the crime, it changes. I mean, things change. Otherwise, so we want to keep the characters as real as possible. So as real as possible, meaning they will have a moment of joy, then they'll have a moment of darkness. They'll have goodness in them. They'll have like an evil thing in them. So we want to keep it as close to real people as possible.
Right. Now, I think it's a great time for South Indian content. I am the most happy when I see a film like RRR or 777 Charlie do well at the box office. And I think this year is a huge renaissance, I think, for Indian cinema generally. And I mean, South definitely does not need any introductions. I think when it comes to success, they've always been fabulous. And it's great to see that growth that it's happening. And I'm also happy that there's a talent exchange as well between the South and North. And it's always been there. But for some reason, I feel Hindi cinema to an extent was depriving itself of a pan-Indian audience. Why do you feel this was the case rather? And going forward, how do you think this unity, which for example Sural is doing and championing for, how do you think that can actually impact the overall success Indian cinema celebrates?
So I think it's time that we stop looking at it as North and South and Hindi and Tamil, and look at it as this is the content coming out of this country. Somewhere I think the main reason is the access now we have to movies and shows in other languages. So when the OTT platforms came in and started buying a lot of regional content and putting it on their platform, like Amazon Prime Video has a whole bunch of Tamil and Malayalam films. And during the COVID period, I think a lot of people have started seeing them. So somewhere the access to this content has been missing for many, many years. And it would be the same, I guess, because of the nature of the beast. Like we are not that exposed to, say, Korean films. That was the truism till 2015. And then once the OTT platforms came in, Korean dramas and Korean gangster dramas, Korean family dramas, Korean comedies have a huge audience in India because now it is available. People are seeing it. I think that access to content has redefined the way in which we consume movies and shows.
Right.
And this one thing of the other point I really liked is what you were saying is about the cross-pollination of talent.
Yes.
That will become, that will open up a lot more. Generally, every industry is very insulated, and to a large extent, you know why also. I mean, Indian film industry is one of the few industries which has withstood the onslaught of Hollywood. We still have a very, very vibrant film industry, and any year's top box office collection will always be Indian films, which is not the case in most of Europe or in most cases, most places in the world, where the big Hollywood films will be the biggest earners in those countries. I think the insulation of an industry does help in this, but what happens is it also insulates itself from just your neighbor. So now that is opening up. But I think at the end of it, it shouldn't become a homogenized, one kind of film works all across the world. We need films coming from different regions which kind of represent the cultural ethos of those regions.
For us as writers, creators, storytellers, no, these are like super exciting times. Because you can, like a small story happening in a little town in South India can actually travel. I mean, cross geographical borders, not just within India, can cross borders. So that is actually very exciting time for storytellers.
I think maybe now movie and web show watching is a new form of travel. People are discovering new places and cultures through these shows.
It's almost like the Twilight Zone has just got real. Like, honestly, sometimes I watch it and I feel like I'm transported into a different place, which is actually a good thing because sometimes we need that escapism. And it's wonderful how the screens of our phones, laptops, and iPads have literally become a form of escapism, a portal of escapism now. And I think I'm very for it. And it's great that films, like you said, the cross-pollination of talent, with a film like Brahmastra, which is also coming out, which is coming to an all pan-India release. I mean, Sural is dubbed in so many different foreign languages, including our very own Indian languages. And it's great. It's the real power of Indian cinema, and I'm definitely for it. But, you know, as content creators, are you able to determine now what style of titles investors would be interested as well? Because I feel like what's happened with the pandemic, see, देखो unpredictable तो है ही हमारा industry, वो तो पहले से ही मालूम है हम सबको. But what's happened because of the pandemic, it's become a lot more difficult to gauge what will work and what will not work. So what are the challenges now, do you think, post-pandemic for US creators and getting that right pitch and backing? from investors?
I think it's a temporary phase. I think by the end of this year, beginning of next year, the film industry will be back in its flow. I don't think content is going to fundamentally change because of this. And it shouldn't, because every region is making a kind of content, and we shouldn't be looking at making content which is written and made to work pan-India or on a global scale. I think you still need to write content which is very rooted, which is very local based, and these stories will travel. I think the gut reaction, the whiplash reaction would be, let's make something which is so generic that it works everywhere. But that would be the wrong gut reaction. I think the way to go forward is to actually hyper localize your stories and talk about a certain time and space, a certain kind of people who are in that time and space, and that is what is going to have the larger appeal, rather than making things based genre. Right now, the gut reaction is slowly towards that, but that will normalize.
I'm glad you mentioned this as well, because you worked on a really huge film called Vikram Vedha, which starred two major stars. And I think you're also working on the Hindi version for that as well, which again is such a highly anticipated film. I know Neeraj Pandey is also producing it, so it adds to the anticipation of that. But as creators, how challenging is it for you to recustomize an established, successful storyline, characters, to an audience from a different section of the country? Like, how challenging is it for you all to do that, to get into the depths of that, especially when you have big stars like Hrithik and Saif, I think, coming on together? I think it's the first time that they're working together, or along those lines. So how challenging is all of that for you?
So I think the key is, again, where are we going to root it? So that was the first point of discussion. Which city is it set in? In that city, which is that locality which it's set in? Which is that house where Veda lives? Which is that house where Vikram lives? So once you start answering these questions, the world starts to fall into place. It won't become, this could have been any city, it could have been Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, or any place kind.
For us, we are very particular about time and space of where the story happens. So those ethos, I mean, especially because Hindi, we are not too familiar with it. We actually did go our extra mile to make sure that we get the local dialect right, the local culture right, and so the house, I mean, everything will be like very authentic. It won't be like one generic. Okay, this is where this happens. That's where that happens, and I think so if you see Vikram Vedha also, it'll be pretty rooted. Be very rooted.
So we spent a lot of time in Lucknow, which is where the story was being set. And I think one of the best ways into a city is the food. So we ate a lot of Lucknowi food to kind of understand the spiciness of people over there. So yeah, it's all part of the experiencing that place before you can actually set your story over there. But having said that, we strongly believe what you write on paper is 50%, and what the actor brings to those words is the remaining magical 50%. So what a Hrithik or a Saif brings to this character, right? That will be the layer which is added on top of the words which were written. And that layer, depending on whichever actor you're working with, is going to be completely new. So in that way, the story is the same, but it's a whole new film because there's a magic which performers bring to their roles.
And not as stars, as actors, as performers. What they bring in, that like that, their little bit of their personality which comes in. That actually makes a huge difference.
Oh wow! Well, I'm looking forward to the film. I think it's been very highly anticipated, and I'm really glad. It's wonderful to see Hrithik and Saif actually explore this sort of a space as well. I think they're very good at portraying dark sort of shades, and I think I've never seen them in this sort of a light. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's got a great star cast as well. I mean, you got, I think, Radhika up there as well in the film. So I guess
you'll see new versions of them. It's nothing like you would have seen before then.
Oh wow. Okay, that's great. Now that's got me even more excited now for the film. But look, I think it's absolutely delightful to have Pushkar, you and Gayatri together on the panel today. And I think Sural is a very special show. It's done very, very well on Prime Video, and I'm really happy to see the growth that South Indian cinema is having and the fact that Indian cinema is now uniting as one entity. And it's great. I mean, as an Indian sitting abroad, it's wonderful for me to be a part of this little revolution and legacy that's happening. So thank you so much for joining me, and can't wait to catch up with you super soon.
Thank you so much, Anuj. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thanks, Anuj.